Anytime I read requirements for a new project or task, eventually I end up thinking about the problem called FizzBuzz. FizzBuzz is used typically on the interviews to gauge a candidate's ability to write a for loop, do a bunch of if-else statements, and use the modulo operator. That's how people, 99.99% of people typically implement it. The requirements are super simple and read as following. Write a program that prints the numbers from 1 to 100, but for multiples of 3 print Fizz instead of the number, and for multiples of 5 print Buzz. For numbers which are multiples of both 3 and 5 print FizzBuzz. So this is very simple. Let me take a stab at the implementation. We'll begin with a loop of I from 0 until 100. In every loop we increment I, and we check if I is a multiple of 3, while at the same time I is a multiple of 5, in which case we print FizzBuzz. Else, if I is a multiple of 3, then we print Fizz. Else, if I is a multiple of 5, then we print Buzz. Else, we print the number. Let's test this out. So number 100 is indeed only a multiple of 5, hence Buzz. 99 is only a multiple of 3, hence Fizz. 1 isn't a multiple of neither 3 nor 5, so we print 1. On 15 we should get FizzBuzz, that's right. So as you see, the implementation is completely straightforward. It's a bunch of if-else statements with modulo and an encompassing for loop. Why do I always remind myself about FizzBuzz when reading requirements? The fact of the matter is, most people I've seen would implement the requirements in this way. But some people, and obviously when I say most, it's just anecdotal experience of what I read on the forums, but some people actually say that the third sentence in the requirements doesn't specify exclusivity. So you should, in other words, you should print FizzBuzz if the number is both multiple of 3 and 5, but at the same time it's not exclusive with the requirements in the second sentence. So in other words, as an example, for 15 you should get FizzBuzz, but you should also get Fizz and Buzz. And probably people thinking this would implement it in such a way that you go in the order of the requirements. So Fizz for 15 you would print Fizz because it's a multiple of 3. You would print Buzz, and then eventually you will print FizzBuzz as well. For our intents and purposes, it's not very important which way is the right way for this problem, but it should highlight to you the importance of completely unambiguous requirement specification. Even if you concede that this solution is the right one, the requirements aren't very clear whether on the ordering of printing out these 3 words for number 15. Now this is a 3-sentence long requirement specification, or requirement or specification. Depends on how you tend to think about these problems. The takeaway from this is that even for the smallest problems where you think you know the solution, other people might see it in a completely different way. For the first solution, the one that I've implemented, you would get 100 values. And no matter how high I scales, it could be 10, but it could be 1,000, you'll always get the same number of messages than the value of I. or rather the scale of I, so in this case from 1 to 100. In the second solution, you'll tend to get variable values, variable number of sentences, that is, depending on the scale of I, but it will always be a much larger number than just the scale of I. So your solutions would differ significantly in terms of just the data that is being the sheer amount of data that is being output. There isn't quite anything, but some people could probably just implement this in a slightly different way, like with return statements or whatnot in separate methods, because this series of if and else if statements is a little bit hard to read, in a sense, but that's not important for the session. What is important is once you internalize the fact that even a very simple, it's one of the simplest programs you would ever be tasked to write, even these sorts of requirements can be misleading to people. And again, it doesn't matter what the actual proper solution is, it only matters that given a simple set of requirements, just in 3 sentences, different people might implement them in different ways because they choose to think differently about what's being written down and sort of scoped out as requirements. That's it, thanks.